This video will begin the process of developing the configuration upload operation. It will become a configuration access file, both an H file and a C file, but we'll see that evolve as we work across here. We're going to start with a little bit of file manipulation and initial work, and then we're going to complete steps 1 and 2 of the 6-step programming process for this particular activity. So let's go ahead and look at our command line first. Here's our config upload directory. Let me back up just a little bit. If you look here, we had our Prj 1, Prj 2, and so on up to Prj 6. But now we're going to go ahead and give it a real name here. I'm calling this config upload directory. And so we will go into that. Remember, you only need to have a few letters and you can hit the tab key. We'll look at that directory. And what I have done is from Prj 6, our previous program that was a string utils test bed, we changed it to config upload main. It's exactly the same program, but I changed this name. I've changed the makefile name here. I've left the string utility names alone. Those will stay with us. I want to point something else out here. There are lots of choices you have with ls, and a couple of my favorites are to use a switch capital A, and lower a works also, but adds a couple things you don't need. And then -L, so you get capital A means it gets alphabetized, and -L means gives it to you in list form. So again, let's take a look at what we've got. We've got config upload main. This was the Prj 6 that we had before. You've got the config upload makefile, which was in fact the program 6 makefile that we had before. And then you've got the string utility tools. So looking at that, here is our makefile. I've changed the name of the program to config upload prog. Talked about config upload main. Here's our final name you'll have here. Here's our config upload main.o as a result of this compiling process. String utils.o as a result of this compiling process. And then we have our ability to clean this. So I want to point out that coming back to my command line now, I can do a make f, and I will use my config upload mf to make the program. We're all good there. And in fact, I can run it. It's now called config upload prog, but it still does the same things that our string utility test file did. And so that's what we've got to work with. With that in mind, let's go back to our editor here. We'll go ahead and open our config upload main. Again, this is the driver for developing the get string length function and the other string functions. And we're going to start making some changes here, but I want to point out before I move on, in fact I'm going to shrink this again. What I've done is I've transferred data over here, renamed it to what I want it to be, but I've proven that it's still working. In other words, I'm starting from a working circumstance. The more you can do this, the better you're going to be. With that in mind, however, I need to add a little bit more here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a config access.h file, because we're going to include string utils, but not directly. So I will create that file in an interesting way here. I'm going to call it config access.h, and I'm calling the word touch. And so when I do config access.h, in fact, that's going to create a config access.h file with 0 bytes in it. What that means now, and I'm just showing you another thing we can do in Unix, Linux, but what that means is that we can go ahead and open up this file and do something with it. So let's do that here. Config access.h. This is going to be a very simple file. we're going to start it off with header files, and this is going to do a pound include string utils.h, and for the time being that's all this is going to have in it. So it's indirectly still going to be in our program, but now we're going to incorporate the config access.h file in there, which we will need more of later on. So I will cancel that. I will come back to my config upload mf here, and now the config upload prog here will now still be dependent on string utils.o, but the config upload main is going to be dependent on config access.h, and the string utils.h will be incorporated into that, so we don't really have to show that anymore. This really doesn't make much of a difference here, but I'm putting it in there because I want to note to myself what the dependencies are. I'm going to save this. I'm going to come back to my config upload.main. I'm going to change this now to config access.h and save it. Come back to my command line, then I'll do a make. We have a happy compiler, and just for grins I will go ahead and run it, and we have a good program. So I haven't harmed anything here in the process of doing this, but I have now made this the directory I will be counting on inside of this main function. Now let's move ahead with that. We will make a new header for our driver here. The name is main. This will be a driver function to test the config file upload operation. Our precondition is still none. This is still the main program, so it doesn't start with anything other than here goes a program from the system, and we'll return 0 on success. Our exceptions are none, and we'll go ahead and add into here now that we're going to demonstrate the development and use of the config file upload. I'm going to say operations and specifically the function. With that in mind, I'm going to make another change to the main header here. I'm going to add a couple of parameters. I'm going to add an integer, what we call arg counter. So it's argc. It's commonly the term that's put in there. This is a pointer to a set of strings. So it's a pointer to strings that come along with the argument that are used on the command line. We're going to be using an argument on the command line, so we're going to be needing this. I'll discuss what we need later. Now, the next step here is I'm going to completely clean this out here down to my shutdown program. So there's my entire main now. And now let's go ahead and get into our steps 1 and 2 for this program. Here I'm going to display the title. That's step 1 there. So after displaying the title, I'm going to check for a failure, check for not correct number of command line arguments, 2. We want 1 for the program name. We want 1 for the name of the file we'll be using. So if we don't have the correct number, then I'm going to print missing command line argument error, and then I will actually stop the program. So we will return non-normal program result, which is anything but 0. So that will just get us out of the way. We check for the not correct number of command line arguments. We print the missing command line argument error, 2 or 3 lines of code actually, and then we'll return the non-normal program result. From there, we will get the data from the configuration file, and we will then check for a successful upload. If we get a successful upload, then we will display that configuration file. If we don't get successful upload, then we'll say that's what we happened. Otherwise, we assume failed upload. and we will display configuration upload error. There's not much going to be in the way of step 2 here. We're going to shut down the program, and one of the things that's going to happen that we know now because we're designing the program at this point, one of the things that's going to happen is this config file data is going to come back as a pointer. So if we know that going in, then what we will do is we will clear the configuration data. That will be clearing the data associated with that pointer. The other thing that we will probably do is add end line for vertical spacing. Either way, whether we clear the data with an error or whether we actually display it, we'd like to have a little bit of vertical space after the process. Now, with this situation here, we now have step 1, and we don't have step 2 because we don't need it. This is just plain too simple. We're going to initialize the function and variables. We're going to display the title, check for incorrect number of command line arguments, and print the error and get out, if that's the case. If we haven't had a problem with that, we will have the file name, and we'll go ahead and get that data. We will check for a successful upload and display the data if that occurred. If we didn't get the successful upload, then we'll display the upload error there, and then from there we will shut down the program that will incorporate clearing the configuration data. In other words, releasing the memory from the pointer. For decoration, we'll add an end line, and then we'll return program success. Now, one of the things we want to do, having brought this in here, is we want to make sure that we haven't broken anything. Let's go ahead and save this. Let's go ahead and go back to the command line. We will do a clean. We will do a compile and build. We're all good there. We can even do a run, but it won't do anything because it's an empty program. But what we've proven is that we're still clean. We're still working correctly here. With this in mind, we will go ahead and finish up this step 1 and step 2 process here, and we will continue on to step 3 in the next video.